Hey there, I'm Lee Ullman here with some big news from the National Young Farmers Coalition. We're partnering with Heritage Radio Network on a special season of The Farm Report. It's all about what's happening with the Farm Bill and how it impacts farmers and eaters.
I am growing diversified vegetables on land that's been in our family for 150 years.
And so with the pandemic, gentrification, property values going up, we had to sell the land and we lost it.
Join us as we uncover the untold stories behind this massive piece of legislation that shapes how we grow our food, what we eat, and so much more.
The problems we have had, those are things that come from earlier Farm Bill and USDA policy, right? Like Earl Butz, get big or get out.
You know, it's my responsibility to know not only what I'm eating, but then like how that all came to be. And realize like, wow, like this piece of legislation, all this money, like it's technically something that I support as a taxpayer.
While Congress debates the next Farm Bill, this is not just an invitation to listen. It's a call to action. Be part of the conversation. Subscribe to the Farm Report on Heritage Radio Network, wherever you listen to podcasts.
Hearst Ranch is a proud sponsor of the Heritage Radio Network. Learn more about Hearst Ranch at HearstRanch.com.
My name is Hannah Forden. I'm the membership coordinator at Heritage Radio Network, but even before I joined the team, I loved listening to HRN during my subway commute. It made the time go quickly and left me feeling inspired for the day ahead. HRN listeners tune in from all over the world, but there are a few traits that we all have in common, no matter where we listen from. A curious palate, the fierceness to make a difference, and a hunger for lifelong learning about the culinary world. As you know, Heritage Radio Network is a listener-supported nonprofit. To deliver the most ambitious, entertaining, and of-the-moment stories in 2018, we need your help. We need to raise $150,000 by December 31st to accomplish these goals and to keep your favorite shows on the air. Together, we can make this HRN's most exciting, impactful, and delicious year yet. Become a member by donating today. Join us at heritageradionetwork.org/donate, and you'll immediately start enjoying benefits such as VIP invitations to HRN events, where you will mix and mingle with your favorite hosts. Memberships also make a perfect holiday gift for all the foodies in your life. This year, why not give the gift of food radio? You'll hear your generosity in action for the year to come. Help keep our lights on and our mics hot by pledging your support today at heritageradionetwork.org/donate. Thanks for listening.
Hello and welcome to A Hungry Society. I'm Portia Wilson, and this is a show where we talk about food, food media, and so much more. Today's guest is Therese Nelson, chef and founder of Black Culinary History, an organization she started in 2008 as a way to connect chefs of color in order to preserve Black heritage throughout the African culinary diaspora. She works to promote, share, and preserve the legacy and work of Black chefs for the next generation. Chef Nelson is a proud product of Newark, New Jersey, where she was born and raised. She is a graduate of Johnson & Wales University and has worked in kitchens in the Hilton, Marriott, and the Four Seasons. Therese, welcome to A Hungry Society.
Hey, of course. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm so happy to have you here. So when I moved to New York a little over a year ago, I started noticing your face at every event.
I try to get out amongst the people every now and then.
For chefs of color, and I can't think of a bigger like cheerleader for chefs of color than you.
Yeah, I'm having to sort of embrace that sort of mantle, but it's one of those things where it's really, when it really boils down, that's exactly what I want my work to really be focused on. Mm-hmm. There's so many dope brown folks doing amazing work all over, and we keep reading these articles about where we are. I'm like, what do you mean? It's a crazy question. We out here. We built this.
Yeah, I was, when I was researching, like doing more research about you,
mm-hmm.
I came across this podcast episode of Hot Grease,
Yes,
Nicole Taylor's
yes.
podcast on
My
Heritage
people.
Radio. And she had you and Karen Washington.
The Karen Washington. Yes.
Karen Washington. And it was on MLK Day, 2013, Obama's second inauguration.
Yes. It was this fortuitous day. She just made first of all, whenever Nicole asks anyone out there, whenever Nicole Taylor asks you to do anything, you say yes.
Do it.
But that particular day was like so weird that it all conspired the same day. It was awesome.
And that episode, it was just, there was so much like joy and happiness and excitement in all three of you talking about not just the like politics and what was happening, but also about the food world.
Yes.
So 4 years, almost 5 years later, things are definitely different on the political side.
Yeah.
But they're also different in the food world.
Absolutely.
What have you seen?
So I think a lot of times we talk about these millennial culture, but it really does move very quickly. And I think that to look at so my site started in late 08, around Christmas time, the holidays of 08. So I always claim 09. But 2009, so social media is just starting. Facebook is just becoming a thing. So then the conversation you're talking about was 2012 or 2013, like so. Just first of all, that 5-year shift being so dramatic in terms of the way that we operated, the way media operated, was such a shift at that moment. But in the last 5 years, I think I've seen almost like a taking up of arms in the Black community, where we have realized our own value and worth, and so many folks have sort of embraced heritage in a way that they hadn't before, or didn't feel the latitude to before. Restaurants like the Cecil, look at what Eduardo Jordan is doing in Seattle. All of that is really a manifestation of the last 5 or so years where folks are feeling like, okay, I really do have a voice and platform where I can actually talk about my own heritage in a way that is not going to be stigmatized or whatever, or at least I have the vocabulary to do it without sort of feeling any kind of way.
Right.
That's the biggest shift I've seen.
Right. So I was listening to it and I was like, wow, we have come so far, but we still have like a long way to go in terms of like actually creating like full equity for people, people of color in general, but specifically Black people in the food world. Which
I think is absolutely true. It's something that is not. It's expected to me. I mean, look at how long it's taken the system to be built in this inequitable way. I mean, how you dismantle a crappy house. I mean, you got the brick by brick. And I mean, honestly, it's lifelong work and it's sort of rooted work, and it's going to take time. And I think it's going to take time to clarify the ask or clarify the mission of the work, right? Because a lot of times I think we have these very broad conversations about diversity and access, but what that really is going to look like or mean is less clear. I think a lot of the work happening in the last 5 years that you mentioned in terms of the growth we've seen has been about people clarifying their ask or clarifying what that access looks like and being specific about it. Because honestly, you can't ask folks for access to their own spaces without a sort of feeling of a reality of being beholden to whatever they're willing to give. And honestly, I'm kind of over that ask. So,
are you saying in terms of being a Black chef or a Black food writer?
All of it. I mean, so when I started my career, I always wanted to be a caterer because very honestly, I thought about this food space that I was coming in. And I know for sure I was not thinking about it expansively at 18, but I definitely thought about the notion of this career that I was going into being very white and very male. That was just my initial impression. And where was I going to personally have the most latitude in my own work? And I realized it was probably going to be in catering. So I soaked up everything I could soak up in culinary school. I went to Johnson Wales and got a business degree as well so that I would be prepared. And I knew for sure that I needed to pick up these tools to be able to run my own business, to cook the way I wanted to cook, in the spheres I wanted to cook in. But that's not everybody's truth or reality. And so this idea about what restaurant you work for, what media space you write for. We live in a world where we are 13% of the population. That's a truth. That is a reality. And so when we criticize spaces, mainstream spaces, for lack of inclusion, that's an absolutely valid conversation to have. But there's no incentive for them to care more about our heritage than we do. And so I don't know that I'm at a place in my age or life or whatever where I'm interested in asking that anymore. If you want to write about some dope person I know that's doing amazing work, absolutely. But it shouldn't be the only space that we have to highlight and cheerlead and get our voices out there. And it's also not the most interesting way to get those voices out, I don't think.
So Nicole, when she was here on my first episode,
passing the torch. Yeah, amazing first episode. That was like, I don't know, that was the world conspiring. It's like this amazing changing of
she said that she's over the discussion of appropriation and she wants to talk about power.
Yes.
So you're touching on that too, of instead of looking to these gatekeepers to make different decisions than what they've been doing, saying to them, not to them, but saying to
the people who are consuming these products, entities, restaurants, everything. I mean, it's not just us, because the other thing I realized over the course of my work is that this is not a conversation that is exclusive to us.
Right.
Every other community that I go into as a person of color, as a chef in these other spaces, especially if they're places of color, with people of color, they're all having the same conversation. Right. And so there's got to be some synergy among folks in multiple disciplines to have best practices lend themselves to everybody else's work. But yeah, I mean, I'm over having a conversation about, why white folks don't value what we do, because you don't have to. I mean, they don't have to. And is that going to mean something for what you earn? Is it going to mean something for the degree of shine? I don't know. But it's got to be centered in what you're actually looking to get from the experience. If you're talking about access, what you're really talking about is resources to further your work. And if that's a fair conversation to have. I want to be a food writer. That's your motivation. And so I need to be in larger mainstream spaces that are going to give me wider access to more eyes, voices, etc. So yeah, a long time ago, really not that long ago, it meant that you had to have access to the New York Times and all these other spaces, and those were not spaces that were necessarily checking for us. Well, now food media in a lot of ways is a lot more democratic. Is your blog going to be as important to the mainstream as the New York Times food page? Probably not. But if you are consistent and passionate and dope on your blog, then those spaces are going to come looking for you. Right. I think that's something that we always discount, that the work we do isn't amazing in itself. And that eventually you're going to have some degree of shine. But that's nobody that I know who's doing important, dope work ever thought about the shine before the work. So I don't know,
they just got to work.
Right. And so there are people, the thing about other disciplines is that, I mean, all these other folks have ways and access to, I don't need to know how to be the most brilliant PR mind, because I have people like Robin Caldwell who can tell me, who could give me best practices in that sphere. We all need to just know that whatever space you're in is amazing, and that work is really the thing. You can't want the Food Network show if you can't cook. The work of it comes first, and access to Food Network is not as important as it used to be, right? Like, even that.
It's true, yeah.
I mean, right now there's so many podcasts, and I mean, that's something about democratic, the space being democratic. Your own podcast, your own website, all these things are so much more accessible than they used to be. And if only you have the vision or forethought to sort of put your own voice out there and have it not need to be as grand in your mind as you thought it was going to be, but just centered on the work you want to put out to the larger world, the audience will come. They're actually looking for alternative spaces in a way that they haven't. Maybe that's another shift, that the public is less beholden to these gatekeepers or sort of larger spaces, and doing their own detective work and finding out smaller, more less known spaces for their media, for their dining, for everything.
So when I was researching you too, I saw this article that you did, and you were talking about Edna Lewis and how finding out about her shifted things for you. Can you talk about that?
So I remember being in high school and thinking I was going to go to Rutgers. I'm from Newark, New Jersey. Newark is the center in Newark, and I was going to be a computer engineer, and I was going to be that, and I was going to have a secure adulthood. I was going to, we had a generation of you go into technology, you always have a job, that kind of thing. But I remember my local library, literally nobody ever went. But they had this very small, sad little food section with a lot of cookbooks of people that I've been able to meet in my travels around through my career. But I remember finding Taste of Country Cooking. And it wasn't the issue with the 30th anniversary with her picture on front, but I remember this picture of her. And she looks so much like my grandmother. And we read through her writing and read through the recipes, is this super personal story. I mean, she's literally just, it doesn't qualify that she's this Black woman. She is. It's in everything about her. It's in the marrow of her bones. But this story is literally just a human story about the way that her family grew up and these foodways that are of this place and time. And very specific. And for it to be so lyrical and to be so beautifully written and have the recipes be some things I knew about, some things I didn't. It blew my mind at 17. And I started thinking about food in a professional way. Like how really, PBS was really the only space at the time, you're talking about in 98, 99, where you could really go and find like concentrated food media. I mean, it wasn't really, for me at least in my limited access, wasn't this expansive thing. So, wow, this woman, what could you, and so I started to research. And it just got me, when I started the site, it was, at that point, had been maybe 8 or 9 years from finding that cookbook. And I realized that I hadn't even gone back to it, really, over all of that time. That you get into, you get into this work, this culinary work, and it is all-encompassing, all-consuming. Your life is that kitchen and that job and that accountability and honing this craft. But what are the reasons that I really wanted to come to this work? And it was really sort of this idea about this life that you could have in food, really. If you could do something well, that's the simplest cooking. And that was so personal that you could make a good life from it. I mean, researching her life and this great migration story that all of our grandparents have, her story of restaurant ownership and, just being this authority and to have her be so revered now at postmortem, like, it's such a gift. But what if we had thought about her more expansively in our own community when she was still alive? Right. What impact would she have had? How differently would we all look at our own careers? How different would food media think about us? I don't know. But for me, her legacy is not so much this sort of globally revered thing. It's this personal connection to the idea that, specifically as a Black woman, just by being who she was in her long flowing caftans, and her, unapologetic, beautiful Black hair, like all of it was enough. She didn't need to be more than she was. She didn't need to be different than she was. And it was beautiful.
And yeah, I need a moment with that. I was just about to say something, and then I just let those words kind of wash over me for a second. Thinking about that and the role that Black women in general have played in all over in food, but specifically in this country, it's crazy to me that her legacy is, it being widely known is so recent. It's offensive. No, yes. That's the perfect word for it. It's absurd. It doesn't make any sense.
And I don't know. I mean, I think a lot of times so you think about Tony Tipton Martin wrote the Jemima Code. And for some people, that might have been their first connection to Edna Lewis, right? But then think about all the other women, all the other folks in that book. I think so often we get tunnel vision in our own careers and don't, especially Black women, like we are so worried, consumed with the business of just being able to own our own space in this work because it's always being questioned. But Annie Northup was Solomon Northup's wife. This woman was apparently the dopest, baddest baker of her day. The reason that Solomon was by himself when he got captured was because she was out in these streets. She had gone to some, there was a retreat or something she catered, and she and her children had gone off to do this once a year gig she was doing. But she was called upon because she was so amazing. There's an authority with which we have legacy in this work. We're the skilled work. I mean, the stories you hear about Philadelphia, like, being this sort of hub for culture and food. I mean, but that it was Black and brown people from Haiti and all over the Caribbean and free brown folks from here that set these trends in the early part of the 19th century. That we can't talk about American foodways, American food culture, American dining in any expansive way. But you just find out, you can't talk about it without our skilled and technique-driven contribution. And women were always the forefront of that. We're always at we weren't. It wasn't shiny work. It wasn't revered work. It wasn't even valuable work until very, very, very recently. But we had always been the voices, the hands that were stirring that
the
pie.
Bodies, yeah,
the bodies. So how do we not pull that legacy into our own sort of? It's got to be part of your marrow, right? Like it's got to be part of why you are unapologetic about your dopeness. How can I not be my own cheerleader? How can I not be a cheerleader for all these women who we all know and we all can name off the top of our heads if we don't? Because we have women like this who literally did it without need for thanks or praise or whatever. I don't know. It would be like a slap in the face to that.
Yeah, they did it because it was in them and they wanted to.
Yeah.
And
before it was cool. Like,
right.
I mean, that's the thing too. Like, Joe Randall talks a lot about being in ACF around that time when the government changed this designation. This used to be domestic work, right? This was work that white folks didn't want to do. All these training schools and around the country where folks sending their Black servants to go and get trained so they could come back and show off to, validate their own wealth and knowledge or sort of chicness or whatever. And so don't you think that we took that back into our own families, our baking traditions, all these things that are so central to Black foodways, Black culture, are not just mistake. Like this is, the result of blood, sweat, and literal tears that gets dismissed because it doesn't look, like you said, about as shiny as French food. It's like it's not as revered as much by other folks, but we have to start from a place where we revere ourselves and are doing the work in our own restaurants or writing or whatever that reveres it without needing anybody else to qualify it, because we know it intuitively. But this is not a matter of opinion. These are facts.
It's a fact.
I mean, yeah, like we don't need anybody else. This is truth.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow. Amen. It's not Sunday, but amen. So we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back with more from Therese Nelson.
Hearst Ranch is a proud sponsor of the Heritage Radio Network. The Hearst family has been raising cattle on the rich, sustainable native grasslands of California's Central Coast for over 150 years. Piedra Blanca Rancho in San Simeon is the original Hearst Ranch, founded by George Hearst in 1865. George's son was the famous publisher William Randolph Hearst. In addition to being known for building the iconic Hearst Castle, William was, like his father before him, an avid rancher. In his words, "I would rather spend a month at the ranch than any place in the world." Thanks to one of the largest land conservation easements in California history, a joint effort with the California Rangeland Trust, the American Land Conservancy, and the state of California, the working landscape at Hearst Ranch will be preserved forever. Learn more about Hearst Ranch at HearstRanch.com.
right, so we are back with Therese Nelson of Black Culinary History. So we're going to shift a little bit from talking about the history and importance of Black people and Black women and food to the next generation and how we lay the groundwork to make sure that it continues and we open more doors. That's something that I think about a lot. And I know you think about it too.
Yes, constantly.
Yeah.
So recently, actually Tuesday, I was at Brownsville Community Culinary Center. It's right here. It was actually, I don't know how, my Brooklyn geography is a little dicey, but it's in the center of Brownsville, and whenever you hear Brownsville specifically, you think of it as you do Newark or Detroit or these other urban cities where there's an initial reaction for the expectation for folks who come from it. So this center, Nicole Taylor is involved in. When she asked you to do something, you do it.
You do it.
And so I went over to talk to these kids, and one of the last questions I got was from this young woman, and the question was, I mean, I'm sure she meant this seriously, but it was one of these kind of one-off questions where I think she thought she was going to get sort of a panned answer about what advice she'd give to young women in food, or young women wanting to come to this career. And I don't know. It was something clicked for me because it's like, do you really want the real answer? Because you can give the pan, like, well, if you just work hard, if you just try hard, because that's the thing you tell young people, right? You want them to be ambitious and you want them to work hard. And I think a lot of times also the conversation I've been disturbed by is this kind of condemnation of millennial culture and this sort of these kids don't, and this, because I think every generation has the same reaction to the generation behind them. What did our mothers, grandmothers think about our generation? And I think there's got to be a pause in that, because part of the part you talked about responsibility to the ones coming behind us is, if we don't like the crop that's coming up, we have to look at what we sowed, what foundation we laid. And so there's got to be some degree of onus on us. But I think about this young woman, right? Because she was fully expecting this sort of panned answer. And one of the things I really tried to drive home was this fact about our legit legacy and resistance, right? Like, we have had examples as far back as time of women, Black women, who were willing to kick in doors and be unpopular and be unapologetic and get what they needed to get to make their lives valuable work, to make their families' lives valuable. And so that's it's kind of the spirit that I wish and hope for these young people, especially young women, to have. That no one is gonna hand you anything, period. But you also you're gonna be, there's a boot on your neck already. Like there is you have strikes against you before you even open your mouth. No matter how brilliant you are, no matter how amazing your work is, you have strikes against you. And that's just a fact. But that does not have to mean anything for what you put out into the world, how you go about your business. Because it's gotta mean you gotta want it more, especially in food. This is not work. If you just want a job, this is not the industry for you.
Right.
But if you have this calling to this work, not only is it gonna be valuable, and not only is it gonna be beautiful and brilliant, but if you really want to come to this, or you really have this calling, you have so many women behind you who literally left you a blueprint. From Enna Lewis to Annie Northup to us sitting in this room are literally here to uplift and move along these young babies who want to come behind us. I think a lot of times the feeling is that we're all just trying to make our own lives work, right? Like, you're just trying to go about the business of keeping your lights on and, keeping your life running and doing the work that you find valuable. And in that does not leave a lot of room for resources for other folks. And that's a perfectly fair and valid way to be. But I don't know. We all have more responsibility than that. I think we can't ask why things keep circularly happening, right? Like, this conversation, I'm sure, is one that if you talk to Jessica Harris, may be similar to one she may have had with Baldwin. And I was like, this is not a unique moment we're in. I think it's unique for us. It's unique for this new moment in food. We're in a new era, but the conversation is so about access and about latitude and sort of breadth of, ability to have our own space, It's not one that is not been had generationally. And so I want us to be in a place where we are really thinking more expansively about how we include these young people in these conversations and prepare them earlier to not have to have this conversation in their own generation 10 years from now.
Right. Like breaking that, you said, when we were talking earlier, you said this really cool phrase of circular conversations, and we do that in food of this is the problem, and then, you know, a few people weigh in on, you know, this is the solution, or, you know, this is really the problem, and then it just kind of gets buried, and then we'll resurrect it maybe a year or two later, but nothing actually gets fixed.
Yeah.
It just continues.
Because I think, like I was saying earlier, the thing about clarity of the ask, because when you're talking about why we aren't, just being more specific about this conversation, where are all Black chefs? What do you mean? Because that's my next question, 100% over the last 5 years. What is exactly that you mean? If you mean where are all Black chefs in fine dining, that's a very specific conversation. But if even that is not particularly contextualized enough, we need to just be clear when we have these conversations. Not the big sort of, you know, articles or whatever, but like in our own personal conversations. What are we really angry at? What are we really mad at? What are we really asking for? Because you can't get what you want if you don't ask for what you need. You
also can't fix a problem if you are not sure what the problem is.
Right. And that's just what I meant about circular, because it's like you said, a lot of times these problems seem so much bigger than they are. To me, the access problem it's a big problem. It's less big than it used to be. That's one of the good things about the last 5 to 10 years. But I don't know. So for some folks, it is wanting to be at these very specific tables. For me, it's more wanting to have more resources to expand the work I'm doing, right? Like, so if it means writing an article for mainstream publication because more folks are going to see it, then okay, I'll write that article. But it's also being more democratic or more discerning about which ones you take, right? Like, a lot of times you want access to a table that really isn't set for you. You want access to a space that really isn't actually including you. You are a token now, as opposed to being a partner or you know what I mean. Like, I don't want to.
Sometimes it's like it's not even a seat at the table; it's the crumbs left over from the dinner that's been had at the table.
Yes, and you're supposed to say thank you.
And I remember Michael Twitty. He actually tweeted that a lot of publications will ask him for slave recipes. Do you have like some slave appetizers that you could give us?
Slave
appetizers. What? Like, that's not. And whatever publication this was, if they had printed that, they would have patted themselves on the back for being inclusive and, you know, tackling diversity. But that's not actually what you're doing. You are just giving some crumbs to an author and thinking that that's enough. And that's not okay.
Well, so two things. One, somebody like Michael, who the work he's doing is so singular, right? And there's a luxury to that, but there's also a downfall to that, right? Like, your access to resources is limited when your voice and message is so specific. There are folks who are not going to want to respond to that. We're not going to want to support that. He gets so much, for all the praise and everything that's happening right now, there is so much backlash, so much, you know, and so to be in a place where you have to be so secure in what your message is that you can defy all of the noise that's going to be around that is not necessarily something that a lot of people have in them. And if you don't even have access to your own to any latitude in your own work, how are you even able to, like, if I can't pay my rent, how am I turning down writing work? How am I turning, you know what I mean? So that's part of the struggle. But then the other part of it is, think about somebody like, okay, so Michael talked about access to that table, but think about like that's my train of thought. Like like, it's not so much about so we talked about earlier about these publications that will specify what they want before you even sending your proposal for an article, right? And so it's kind of on us to then redefine what that ask from them is, well, when they call you and ask you for this marginalized article or quote for an article, or seen on a panel that you know is really a token, how much of a responsibility to say no, or to redirect what they thought they wanted to something that more represents what you think should be,
because they asked you for a reason,
right? And so that part of that power, right, that part of your access, your platform, or whatever, has got to be more focus driven if we're all gonna move the goalposts forward.
Definitely.
And that's a big ask. That's a big ask in a relatively new media space, when some folks don't even know we have access to certain spaces. You know what I mean? Like, you don't even, some people just have aspiration, but no actual access. So it's a hard thing to ask somebody to do, but it's really the only thing that's going to be.
It's the only way.
Yeah.
So I have some questions that I ask every guest.
Sure.
Do you have a favorite restaurant at the moment?
So it used to be the Cecil, and that's that. But there's a guy named Banks White who used to work at the Cecil. Well, he used to work at Minton. So when they were all sort of a team, he's in Seattle now. San Francisco now. He is probably. He's been on some list or whatever, and people know his work. But this man, the way he cooks right now, I mean, it's the most inspired, most delicious, most brilliant. Any way he's cooking, I'm going. Yeah. And he's at this place called Rambler in San Francisco. Just from the pictures, I'm making a trip to San Francisco next year. Nice. Committed. But anyway, Banks is cooking. Also, Dwayne Nutter. He's he used to be out of Atlanta. I think he's in Mobile, Alabama. I think his restaurant's called National. But yes, anything Dwayne Nutter cooks, I'm going to eat. So wherever those two are in the world, that's where I'm going to eat.
Do you have any like neighborhood restaurants, or like,
So see, that's the thing. We also in Brooklyn. Like, everybody I know in the New York area always points to Brooklyn as the restaurants that, I don't know Brooklyn that well. But right now, I think if I was going to go out, I'll probably go to Chef's Club, because it's a little bit of a mix of different chefs. Right now, JJ's doing his residency there. But I mean, I'm sure whoever's coming next is going to be dope. And it's a place where you can go and have a lot of experiences week to week, usually. So that's pretty dope. I like going there.
Chef's Club is awesome, especially right now with JJ. Can you talk about, you can name names if you want to, but you don't have to. Can you talk about one of the worst dining experiences you've ever had?
Excuse me. I don't know. I mean, let me tell you that going out to eat in general is like one of the most, it's like a treat, because I'm just time-wise. So I figure right now I'm down to about 5 or 6 times a year. I'm going out to some places that's special and I actually have to like comb my hair and all. But I don't know. Worse is kind of a relative thing. I don't know if I have a worse.
Well, any like memorable, like bad experiences you've had in a restaurant?
You know what I don't enjoy? I don't enjoy when you go to restaurants that are supposed to be simple. Like, you used to have this neighborhood spot, and I won't name the name, but I live in East Harlem, and it used to be a spot. I'm between First and Second. It used to be a spot a little farther down from me, but on First Avenue, and it was like it's supposed to be this neighborhood, like sort of representing Harlem, sort of Black foodways or whatever, and the woman who owned it was super nice, and she was never there. And it was it was supposed to be like this kind of fresh take on, so it was like, if you were in neighborhood, not as gentrified as the West Side, but with East Side it's getting there. So it's feeling of like a wider audience enjoying this sort of Black foodways experience. But she was never there, so every time you would call, the person who answered the phone was a little bit rude. The food was inconsistent when she wasn't there. You started off with like this amazing packaging and just like really, and then it just sort of declined. One thing is just, I want our things to not be janky. Like, why can't we keep up these standards? And there's a lot of reasons why. Right. Black ownership and like that's one of the things I was talking about earlier, like access to spaces, right? Like,
right.
What do you mean by where we are? What you're asking is about access. why do restaurants fail, period? But why do because we don't start with the same capital everybody starts out with.
Right.
You start out with these amazing bags and great packaging and all of this, but then your profits start declining and you don't have more income flow. So yeah, you can't afford the dope, biodegradable, China glass silver, whatever. And so things start to decline. But yeah, it was sad to me, and it's something that I see a lot in. So there's simple concepts where you don't set a standard early, and then all of a sudden it's like this thing that was my go-to. I used to love this particular salad, and I don't even want to call and go anymore. Like, yikes.
Yeah, that's always disappointing when someplace you love. I was actually talking to my husband about this recently, about how introducing like your favorite restaurant to someone someone you love, is like introducing someone you're dating to like your family. Yes. And when they don't act right, you are embarrassed. Yes. You're just like, okay, please, just this time, just be good, just be good this time, please, please. And so it's so disappointing when restaurants don't live up to the love the hype that you've put on them and the love that you have for them.
Yes.
But if you could have a meal, your last meal in a restaurant, where would it be and who's invited?
So you see me square. I was thinking about this thing, and I'm not sure it would be a restaurant per se. It would probably be someplace like the James Beer House, or Madam C.J. Walker has a mansion upstate, a little farther upstate.
Where?
It's like not. It's a little further north than Westchester, but it was her home.
Oh wow!
And this black investment, but he's like the first person to own like either stock on an exchange or something. So he has some moniker in the business world, so the finance world. But he owns it now. His family owns it. And it was her estate, and it's beautiful, and it's just there. So it would be someplace like that, and it would be probably a group of chefs. Somebody like Banks and somebody like Dwayne, like all of the chefs that I think are brilliant in one room.
How many people?
It would probably be 20-ish, because it would be, I want to be this, I've been having this thing in my mind, and anybody out there who has resources, please let me know.
If you have capital, please contact Therese.
Please do. But this like I would want to have women like Jessica Harris and Lenny Sorensen and I don't know, like Leah Chase and all these women in food or in the periphery, like who I think are just amazing at one table, eating food that I don't have to cook, so that's where the Dwayne and all of them come in. But exquisite meal, beautiful setting, and be able to, ask these women these questions that have been on my spirit for so long. So I guess maybe I have to be more than 20, because I think there will have to be more of our generation there too to be able to talk. But for my own personal, it would probably be about 20, but just this sort of, all these women around this beautifully set table, want to say thank you, but also to just get this wealth of knowledge and answer all these questions that I have. But the food wouldn't matter. It would be whatever is delicious. So that I know, that's why I picked Dwayne and
the food wouldn't matter. You wouldn't want like.
Well, I think Dwayne and
they do it
JJ,
right.
Yes, they would know. They would know what to do. But I think it would have, maybe it would be a collection from all of the women around the tables.
Oh, yeah.
Inspired by their own work. Like
I think you are in real time like drafting the best event I've ever heard of.
Yeah, I think I might be.
I think you are. So what are people drinking?
I think it would be a mix of all these amazing black vintners that I've found over the years. Like Mac McDonald from Vision Cellars has he calls it Blanc Gris, and it's not a lot of it, but it's this sort of hybrid of Pinot Grigio and Chenin Blanc and Blanc Grigio. I mean, Chenin Blanc and Pinot Grigio, because his wife, Miss Lil, liked, I think, the Pinot Grigio, and he liked the other grape, and it's like 90% her, 10% him. So I mean, there are all these amazing stories from vintners like that. So it would be this really specific selection. Maybe I find some amazing brown sommelier to sort of curate the wine list, but it would be specific. It would be all black everything. It would be black liquor, black wine, and it would be it. That's what it would be.
All black. That's the name of your event.
Maybe. So look at this.
Look at this. This is meant to happen.
Yeah, I think it is.
Well, Therese, I could talk to you for hours and hours and hours. But it's the end of the show, and I'm
crazy.
honestly a little sad because I love talking to you. You're such a wealth of knowledge. Can you let listeners know where they can find you?
Sure. So my site is blackculinaryhistory.com. It is literally this landing space for all things brown food. It's got some surprises for you guys in the next year. The kind of new year. But on social media, everywhere, I'm Black Culinary. So Twitter, Instagram, all that. And also our group on Facebook. Please come and join and see the conversations that are happening. So many people are so generous with their time, and folks you know and don't know and should know.
33,000 people around the world talking about Black culinary history. So it's a beautiful thing.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on The Hungry Society.
Thanks for having me. I am so inspired by the fact that you are here doing this work now. You are a couple months in, but it has been spectacular so far. And I'm telling you that you are changing the game. So I love it.
Thank you.
I love it.
Well, thank you so much for listening, and we'll catch you next week on The Hungry Society.
Thanks for listening to Heritage Radio Network, food radio supported by you. For our freshest content and to hear about exclusive events, subscribe to our newsletter. Enter your email at the bottom of our website, heritageradionetwork.org. Connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at heritage_radio. Heritage Radio Network is a nonprofit organization driving conversations to make the world a better, fairer, more delicious place. And we couldn't do it without support from listeners like you. Want to be a part of the food world's most innovative community? Rate the shows you like, tell your friends, and please join our community by becoming a member. Just click on the beating heart at the top right of our homepage. Thanks for listening.